At the start, a girl's voice could be heard saying that trying something better than alcohol might be worth it, describing it as the sound of someone's voice that could take you somewhere far away. She whispered those words softly into a boy's ear. The scene then shifted to a school building. Inside a classroom, a boy sat quietly at his desk while the others chatted around him. Behind him, someone asked if another had watched a certain stream, and the answer came that they had. Nearby, students made plans. One asked what everyone was doing after class. Another mentioned going to karaoke yesterday, and a third suggested going again today. Listening to them, the boy sighed inwardly, thinking to himself in disbelief. He took out his AirPods and slid them into his ears. He thought that nothing good ever came from getting too close to people. Still, he wondered how they found the energy for it every single day. People needed space, he told himself, and this distance he kept was one he had chosen. He didn't need a reason to be alone. Suddenly, someone tugged the AirPods from his ears. A cheerful voice greeted him with a good morning and asked what he was listening to. Turning, he saw that it was Sasaki Senpai. With a playful smile, she asked if she could listen too. When she placed one of the AirPods in her ear, she let out a surprised sound, then quickly pulled it out, her face flushing red. "Wait, is this something LWD?" she exclaimed. Panicking, Hajime waved his hands and stammered, "No, it's ASMR." Flustered, he explained that ASMR was a way to relax by listening to soft sounds, like whispers or gentle tapping, that could make your skin tingle and help you calm down. For him, the main trigger was whispers. He added that a trigger just meant the type of sound someone liked best. Realizing how awkward he must have sounded, he quickly apologized, saying it must have seemed weird or gross. But Sasaki shook her head with a kind smile. "Not at all," she said. "I can tell you really love it. It's nice to have something you care about that much." Blushing, Hajime tried to compose himself, but then Sasaki leaned closer, her lips near his ear, and whispered, "Wouldn't it feel even better live?" Startled, he jerked back in shock. Sasaki laughed and changed the subject with a teasing grin. "Oh, by the way, that CD you gave me? It was amazing." Still flustered, Hajime mumbled, "I'm glad you liked it." Just then, another student called for her notes. Sasaki waved and said she'd see him later. When someone asked her what that was about, she simply replied, "Just something." Left alone again, Hajime slipped his AirPods back in and thought about Sasaki Nan. She was a second-year student, the newly crowned campus star in the university's beauty contest. With her stunning looks and easygoing charm, she received countless confessions, though she turned every one of them down. On top of that, even the girls adored her, making her popular with everyone. And yet, this was how he had first met her. He remembered that someone had once called out to him, asking if he was Soda Hajime. Turning, he had seen Sasaki and herself introducing herself as a second year, smiling as she asked if he could help her pick out a computer since he was good with them. From then on, she had started chatting with him occasionally. Hajime admitted to himself that just because he was quiet didn't mean he was a walking PC manual. He wasn't good at dealing with Sasaki, not because he disliked her, but because he simply struggled. Sitting behind him, she would sometimes stare, and Hajime couldn't help but think that she was totally his type. Still, she felt far out of his league. He knew his place. And yet, whenever she teased him, he couldn't stop overthinking it. He convinced himself that she probably treated everyone the same. Even so, when she spoke to him, he felt the stares of others burning into him. Later, sitting on a bench, he decided to escape those thoughts and placed his AirPods back in. With a small smile, he thought of Otajuan, a chill streamer who had just reached 100,000 subscribers, listening to the familiar sounds. His expression softened as he let himself relax. Suddenly, someone shouted, calling out, Hajime-kun, there you are." Hajime looked up and, surprised, recognized Sasaki Senpai. She reminded him that she had said, "See you later." With a tense expression, he thought to himself whether that later from before had actually meant this moment. He wondered why she would come looking for him. While she herself repeated aloud the same question, blushing, he scolded himself not to overthink it, insisting in his mind that it was gross to do so. Hesitantly, he asked if she had needed something. She replied that she couldn't talk to him without needing a reason. In his mind, he begged her to stop messing with his head. She then admitted that she did, in fact, have a reason. He thought that he knew it, deciding not to fall for it again, and asked what it was. She explained that she actually streamed, too, and had been looking for someone to help her out. Hajime was stunned, thinking in disbelief that his senpai was also a streamer. She sat beside him on the bench while he exclaimed in shock if she meant him. His thoughts panicked over why she was so close. He stammered that she could ask anyone else for help. She, however, replied that she hadn't told anyone else and felt that he could keep a secret. He stood up, claiming that it wasn't as though he had anyone to tell anyway. She pointed out that he was always helping her with tech stuff. He argued that even this level of closeness already drew too much attention, his face tense, but she smiled and told him to just ignore it. He thought inwardly that he couldn't. She then asked if he didn't want to. His mind screamed at her to stop since it made it sound like she was flirting. Blushing, he stammered that it wasn't as though he didn't want to. It was just before she interrupted, offering to pay him. He repeated the word in surprise. She stood up, promising to give him whatever he wanted, anything at all. Leaning close to his ear, she repeated that he had heard her correctly. He backed away nervously, repeating the word anything, while she confirmed playfully with a anything. His mind spiraled, wondering if anything could even mean her. He questioned what was going on, and what the catch might be, worrying that it could be some punishment game or setup. More importantly, he panicked about the distance between them as her face drew closer. As she leaned in, he stammered, barely managing to speak before suddenly running away in embarrassment, shouting an apology. Watching him flee, she smiled mischievously, calling after him that he should come find her if he changed his mind. The scene shifted to later that night in Hajime's apartment. Sitting at his desk, he thought back on the day's events, asking himself what that had been about. He wondered if she had just been messing with him. He admitted that it wasn't the closeness he hated, but rather that he couldn't understand why she got close to him. He simply didn't want to misread her and embarrass himself. Glancing at the time, he realized it was already almost 7 p.m. and cursed that it was so late. As the announcement of a stream's beginning came on, he quickly put on his headset. Hearing the familiar start, he relaxed, reflecting that Otatsu-san's voice was always the same, always at the right distance. For him, this was the only time he could forget about what people thought. He smiled, noting that her taste in games matched his perfectly. Suddenly, he remembered that his senpai had mentioned she streamed too, and regretted not asking her channel name. But just then, the streamer's voice cut out in shock before abruptly ending the broadcast with an apology. Surprised, Hajime asked aloud what had happened, insisting it was far too early to end. The monitor displayed that the stream had ended. He put down his headset and then heard noises coming from the apartment next door. Standing up, he muttered that it must be his neighbor. He recalled that someone had moved in just the previous week, and guessing it was a woman, hoped she wouldn't be too loud, since that would be annoying. The banging continued. Checking his phone, he saw it was already close to 11:30. He considered contacting the landlord, but dismissed it as too late. Lying on his bed, he decided to bear with it for the night. But then suddenly, a scream rang out. A woman's voice cried for help, begging someone to stay away. His expression turned tense as he realized it was coming from the next apartment. Horrified, he wondered if it was a crime scene. In a panic, he decided he had to call 110, but then argued with himself that it would be too late. Grabbing a mop for protection, he rushed to the neighbor's door and rang the bell with a trembling hand, calling out nervously to ask if they were all right, introducing himself as the neighbor. The door flung open, and to his shock, Sasaki-senpai threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly and crying out. Flustered and blushing, he stammered her name, asking why she was there. She explained tearfully that there had been a mouse. He repeated the word in disbelief just as the mouse squeaked and ran past them. Both of them stumbled and fell, with her landing on top of him, still clinging to him in fear. She admitted that it had appeared in the middle of her stream, which had terrified her. Realization struck Hajime, and he blurted out the truth as he recognized her voice. Stunned, he called her Otosu. With a cheeky smile, she admitted it, teasing him with a playful oopsie, confirming that she was indeed his favorite Otosu, his next-door neighbor and his senpai. She added that since he had rushed over, he was now helping her. Panicked, he denied it, insisting that he had only come because of the screaming. But she reminded him that he had already received his reward. Confused, he asked what reward she meant, only to look down in shock, blushing furiously as he realized his hands were pressed against her chest. She teased him further, reminding him that she had promised anything, and remarked that asking for her as payment was pretty bold. Mortified, he stammered that it was a misunderstanding, but she declared that there were no takebacks and that he was helping. He began to sweat nervously as she leaned closer to his ear, whispering that otherwise, she'd just have to tease him more. In that moment, He thought to himself that with just a single whisper from his senpai, his quiet little world had already begun to crumble. The scene shifted to the next day at school. Hajime was walking down the hallway when he spotted Sasaki ahead, chatting with two girls. As Sasaki passed by, she whispered softly into his ear that she'd be waiting in her room. The girls continued walking, and Hajime's face tensed. One of them asked Sasaki if he had just said something, but Sasaki replied casually that he hadn't. Hajime thought to himself that after discovering his favorite streamer was actually Sasaki-nan Senpai, the most popular senior on campus, everything had changed. He repeated in his mind that after finding out the truth, and now on this day, he was about to ring the bell to her apartment. Standing there, he blushed, thinking that she had actually invited him to his senpai's room. When Sasaki opened the door, she greeted him warmly, telling him she'd been waiting and urging him to come in. Hajime noticed how she dressed to home, and in his mind, he admitted she looked far more relaxed than usual. She turned to him with a smile and said that he was the first guy to ever come into her place, just so he knew. Hajime blushed deeply, and when she asked what was wrong, he stammered that it was nothing, admitting awkwardly that she was using her stream voice. She corrected him, saying that it was actually her natural voice. Blushing even harder and clutching his chest, Hajime thought nervously that he might actually throw up from how tense he felt. He noticed that she smelled sweet, but also faintly sour, and tried to calm himself by taking deep breaths. Inside, he saw that her room was an absolute disaster. When she mentioned that it was kind of messy and asked him to just ignore it, he immediately reacted by shouting and sitting down on the floor in disbelief. Sasaki asked what was wrong, but he could barely stammer a reply. She casually explained that for some reason, the mess just kept piling up, and with a wink and a sly smile, she said it was a girl's secret. Hajime was stunned, wondering if this really was Sasaki-senpai, and thought that calling her relaxed was putting it kindly. She sat down at her desk chair while Hajime, who still refused to sit among the trash, thought that he'd honestly rather stay standing. Sasaki thanked him again for helping her out, but he replied that it was fine. Even though he sat awkwardly on the floor, he thought bitterly that she had basically forced him into it. Out loud, he remarked that if she just admitted who she really was from the start, things might have gone differently. She asked if he would have agreed right away, and when he hesitated, she concluded he wouldn't have. She said she knew he was the kind of guy who'd keep a respectful distance from his favorite streamer, and she hadn't wanted to pressure him by revealing the truth. Hajime realized she had him completely figured out, and that she'd actually been considerate. He thought it was exactly something Otatsu-san would do, and he addressed her as Senpai. Suddenly, Hajime felt something in his hand. Looking down, he froze. It was her panties. In shock, he blurted that it couldn't be. She laughed, explaining that she'd left them there when she took a shower earlier. His mind spiraled, realizing they were freshly worn, and he thought this definitely wasn't something she should be so casual about. His eyes drifted downward toward her legs, and he wondered nervously if she was even wearing anything under her clothes. At that moment, she noticed his gaze, smiled teasingly, and asked if he wanted to find out. He turned bright red, instantly dropping the panties and shouting for her to take them back. Sasaki laughed as she picked them up, while Hajime stammered and quickly changed the subject, asking what exactly she wanted him to do. Sitting down on the floor, she suddenly called his name, Sota Hajime. Startled, Hajime looked up as she fixed him with a serious gaze and asked him to go out with her. The scene shifted to a mall where people stared at Hajime, who was wearing a cap, glasses, and a mask. Sasaki approached him from behind and whispered in his ear, asking if she had kept him waiting before apologizing for being late with a bright, cheerful smile. Hajime tensed up, thinking that his senpai was way too close. He quickly walked away, but she stopped him and questioned what was with his outfit. He admitted that he did not want to stand out too much, but she replied that if anything, it only made him look more suspicious. People were staring at him, and Sasaki, with a tense expression, reached up to remove his glasses. She declared that she would be taking them and told him that there were to be no disguises on a date. She said he was not allowed to hide his face on such a special occasion. As she tucked the glasses into her chest, Hajime panicked and thought that she had actually said date. He wondered how she had even recognized him under the disguise. As they walked together, he thought that the distance between them meant it could not really be a date. But then again, for someone as outgoing as her, maybe the word date had an entirely different meaning. Still, he admitted to himself that she was amazing since everyone around them was turning their heads to look at her. They entered a building, and Sasaki mentioned that her microphone had been acting up lately, so she hoped he could help her choose a new one. Hajime realized that when she had said go out, she had literally meant going out shopping, and he felt relieved, but also oddly happy. He muttered that honestly she did not need to go out with him just to choose a microphone. Sasaki tilted her head, and asked teasingly if she had perhaps got his hopes up. When he turned around in shock and asked what she meant, she leaned closer, and asked if maybe he had been thinking of something a little naughty. Hajime blushed furiously, and insisted that of course not, that he was just helping her out. He admitted nervously that for someone as popular as her to ask a gloomy guy like him to hang out, it felt like a honey trap. Sasaki, standing close to him, told him with a straight face that she would never do something like that to him. Hajime blushed and asked what she meant by that, but Sasaki quickly spotted a microphone and exclaimed excitedly, asking what he thought of it. Hajime was stunned as he watched her enthusiasm and thought to himself that he seriously did not understand how extroverts thought. He pointed out that she would not even be on camera, so the appearance of the microphone should not matter. She simply replied that cute was justice. Hajime repeated the phrase wondering and admitted that perhaps it really was justice. He asked if she was going for an idol aesthetic, but she firmly stated that a face reveal was a total no-go because she would never be able to handle it. Hajime then told her that her voice was great and that the microphone suited her perfectly. He picked up another one, muttering like a nerd about the different options, and then apologized for rambling. Blushing, he admitted that he must have sounded strange, but Sasaki assured him that it was fine. She picked up a headset, placed it gently on his head, and told him it was nice. Then, speaking into the microphone, she said that he really cared about Otatsu too, that he had been watching her closely, and that it made her happy. Hajime froze, staring at her, deeply moved, before telling her that it was perfect. He took off the headset and, with a serious expression, declared that she was absolutely perfect and amazing. Sasaki blushed at his words. The scene shifted again to the school building, where some girls were chatting. One girl asked if the other had heard about Na, and the other replied that she had not. The first girl explained that she had seen Na hanging out with some gloomy guy the other day. The other reacted in disbelief, questioning what she would be doing with him, but then added that N did talk to everyone anyway. Another girl who had overheard their conversation laughed to herself, repeating the words that Nene was hanging out, seeming amused by the idea. Meanwhile, Hajime muttered the words angel to himself as he glanced at Sasaki, who was blushing beside him. The two of them were still at the store together.